Hello and welcome to the British and Irish Eagles podcast. I am your host and we are live. We haven't been live in a long time. I'd have to say a little bit of nerves crept in there as I was, about to announce. Normally when we're recording the podcast, it's pretty easy. You just go with the flow. I'm like, oh, hang on, I need to make sure I don't miss a beat here. But I haven't so far. Probably will. Welcome to those of you watching and listening live, and those listening to where you find our podcast or on YouTube. We have a good podcast this week, mainly because we split the podcasts. We decided we didn't want to do the negative losing podcast and roll into the winning podcast last week. So we got all out of our system, or at least probably 75% of it out of our system. And we are ready to look forward to the Eagles game against the Browns this coming Sunday, 6 p.m. UK time, 1 p.m. local time. And boy, do we have a packed up lineup for you. We're going to touch on a lot of news, actually. There's always a lot of news in the bye week, a lot of time for teams to think about what's gone wrong, what's gone right, how they can improve. There's been some news on the injury front. There's been some releases. One guy has been released and brought back, and released and brought back, and released and brought back, and released and brought back. And also we've had some press conferences in the last few days as well, which is good. We're going to talk about the weaknesses of the Browns. We're going to talk about the difference makers that they have. We're going to look at the Eagles and what they can do against them to take that W, which is very, very much needed. Hello there, Mike, listening in. Yes, Phil is probably on his middle floor somewhere along. Without any further ado, let me welcome in the wisest man of the three, the brain, that is Tony Brewerton. Tony, how are you, my friend? Another week nearly gone.
I am incredibly worried, Liam, that we are live and you've given me this massive intro. There's absolutely no room to manoeuvre on the pod tonight. We are in a position where we get it wrong, we take our humble pie, and I'm just panicking that you're going to ask me to name some of these Cleveland Brown players. Thankfully, I think we're going to call him Jock, but that's not a slang reference to a Scotsman. I'm just going to laugh at one of you two trying to pronounce his name. But I'm good. It was nice to have a little off week. Sitting on the couch watching some Red Zone on Sunday night, laughing at the 49ers, almost laughing at the Cowboys. And I have to say, getting a bit worried about the Washington Commanders. But we'll no doubt come on to them in the weeks to come. Tonight's about focusing on Sunday's game against the Browns.
Absolutely is. And we seem to have a special guest appearance behind me, licking his arse. That is Amos, the fatter of the two ragdolls that are in this house. So, he seems very interested in what we're doing right now. Phil, how are you, sir? Welcome back to the podcast. Are you looking forward to, are you now looking forward to, are you ready to be hurt again, Phil?
Absence makes the heart grow fond, as we all know. The longer we go without Birds football, the more eager we are to get back into it. And we've all been sort of filling the void with a bit of Phillies baseball, which unfortunately hasn't gone the way we would like it to have, with a bit of a damp squib last night. But, hey, it gives us a bit more reason to get optimistic about the Birds this weekend. Everything's pointing towards it being positive, players back, the matchup, so on and so forth, which also makes us just feel even worse because the more the expectation
to
win
get
comes,
hurt, right?
exactly, yeah. So I'm looking forward to it, but also equally quite nervous about it.
I love it. All right, so Eagles have had the bye after being humbled against a supercharged Baker Mayfield. I think it was something like 280 unanswered yards at one point in the game. Evening, madam, go Birds, buddy. And they've had a lot of time to lick their wounds. They've done a lot of talking. It sounds like Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni have been doing a little bit of kumbaya meditation, rubbing each other's backs and massages. I don't know if that's because they're facing Deshaun Watson this upcoming week, but they've certainly had some time together to get it right. And let's go into some of the news that we've heard over the last week or so. And the best news, I suppose, is on the injury front, right? Lane Johnson, we know what the Eagles' record is without Lane Johnson. It's on the floor, it's in the toilet. He has been cleared. He will play. I did see a note that he was actually cleared to play against the Buccaneers. I didn't get time to read into that article as to why he didn't suit up. I don't know if one of you guys have, but he's not the only person back. We also have AJ Brown back. We also have Devontae Smith back. And hopefully, we never see Fred Johnson on the field again after giving up 10 pressures last week. Also, news on the injury front, Sidney Brown and Anaya Smith are both back in the practice window. Sidney Brown was speaking to Dave Spadero the other day, saying he's ready to go. It was only moments after his 99-yard interception touchdown pick six last year that he had that ACL injury. Said he was on the phone to his brother Chase, who's been doing well at running back position this year, and a pouring of emotions flooded out, and he's been thinking about that moment ever since, and he's ready to fly again. So, looking forward to seeing Sydney get back in action as well. Just on that, Phil, glad to see the trio back. We're just putting that loss to the back of our minds now. The Eagles go and play good football now. We just attribute it to that.
I mean, that's what should happen, right? That's the excuses that we were using against Tampa Bay, not having Lane, not having AJ or Devontae. But again, it's the whole, the expectation is like, because it seems so obvious that that's what should happen, it also feels like that's exactly what won't happen. But I am definitely excited to see them back. And you're right, I think Lane Johnson was cleared, then kind of not cleared. I think they were like, ooh, they don't want to make a mistake. And I guess given the situation it was against Tampa Bay with everyone else being out and the bye week being the week later, that just probably was someone at the last minute went,
Wasn't worth it.
maybe we shouldn't do that. And I guess the fact that we've lost, now we've processed the loss, we're all kind of going, right move all day long. We're all sort of kind of going, thank God that they didn't push anyone back before the bye, because now we're coming back healthy. And we've got this solid platform to get really excited about the game this weekend.
Oh, the word excitement. Didn't have that in my vocabulary last week, but it's good to hear it on this podcast. Tony, another news update, and that is Devin White has been released by the Eagles after Howie Roseman invested a whopping $3.5 million at the linebacker position. It was his biggest swing at that position in the offseason. Former first round pick, former Super Bowl winner. We've seen him play well before. Set up that WhatsApp group with AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts earlier in the year. Are you surprised that he's been let go? If injuries go down this year, or are you just saying, sayonara, see you later?
It's a really funny one, isn't it? In that we've invested a bit of money in him. And he came in with, certainly he coming in, I had a lot of hope about what he was going to bring, particularly with some of our linebacker play last year. But it would seem that things aren't working out for him. He's had a couple of personnel issues, we know that. And of course, with Sidney Brown coming off the pup at the weekend, there is a required space. He's probably looking at his chances to play. He's had a conversation with Howie to say, are you going to, am I going to get a game? Am I not going to get a game? And it would seem that Howie's done the right thing, and he's done the right thing. Good luck to the guy if he wants to go and play football somewhere. He must be pretty shit if he's not getting his game ahead of some of the guys that we've had out in the field over the course of the last week.
He was also seen celebrating a Bucks play from one of his old teammates last week as well. Could that have been the nail in the coffin as well?
You wonder. We spoke last week about Jalen's commentary and Darius Slay being on Micah Parsons' podcast. Sometimes there has to be a scapegoat. You make an example of these types of behaviour. So possibly it is. That's one of these things that I think we'll never know. But if we're getting Sidney Brown back healthy, Jeremiah Trotter takes another step closer to a starting berth. I'm quite happy. I'm quite happy playing the young guys. Yep, I'm quite happy playing the younger guys. And if that means moving on, someone like Devin White, that we don't really know what we had until we've lost it, and we're never going to know what we had. So It is what it is. I think we just move on.
What do you think happens to that WhatsApp group? You know,
I
I
don't think it
heard
ever got started. It seems to
really.
me like it was a bit naff to begin with. Like, oh, we got a little private WhatsApp group, and we're going to be like putting inspirational quotes in there. And I was like, all right, yeah, cool. That sounds
Keeping
brilliant.
each other accountable. Wasn't that some of the words that were used at
Yeah,
the time?
like if either they did or they didn't. I mean, I know.
Do we need a WhatsApp group like that? Like keep
We
each
do,
other
don't we?
accountable.
Like it's the
Well,
admin
no,
group.
I know we have one, but inspirational quotes. I mean, there's not many inspirational quotes I see in our little group with Mick. It's normally stuff that we can't repeat on this podcast, to be honest.
No, but to be fair to Devin White, he's been a professional the whole way through. Whatever is the truth and what's actually happened, it's just not worked out. He's not come out. He's not been grumpy. He's not been outspoken. And apparently, the Eagles are making it a very there's a mutual agreement with salary cap, so the
Yeah.
Eagles might not even may even recoup some of the dollars that they spent on getting him in the first place. So it just seems to me all around that they tried. It wasn't going to work. No one's upset. No one's angry. The whole celebration thing. He's come from Tampa. He's got some friends. It's a bit of a nothing story to me, really.
Okay, I like it. I like it. I tell you what is not a nothing story. What is not a nothing story is, well, one, the story that Mr. Tony Brereton, congratulations on your first article for the British and Irish Eagles, which was launched this week. Really good reviews from everyone. Sirianni and Hertz in the courtroom playing it out, the prosecution and the defense, the jury, simply fantastic. And the reason I bring that up is not to blow smoke up your arse, Tony, which I would never like to normally do. It's actually because we have an update on that, and that is Jalen Hurts in the press conference. For the first, we talked about this, and we've talked about this on multiple occasions throughout the last year, but specifically last week, and we specifically called out that Jalen Hurts has not backed Sirianni publicly in the press conference. We spoke about it for about 10-15 minutes. It was the one defining factor that made me feel like Sirianni might be out the door. Just going to read you out this little piece from Jalen Hurts's conference. When asked about Sirianni, he said it shared some great moments during the bye week. We are two leaders of the team. I'm happy and fortunate that we were able to come together in harmony and have the same goal in mind to try and get Diggs right. I have a ton of confidence in him, a ton of confidence in what he brings, everything he's been able to accomplish here. And then this is the other side coming out a little bit here. Everybody goes through different moments. Everyone experiences adversity. We've experienced different moments of adversity together. We're excited of what's to come. Now, that is a ringing endorsement at a time that was needed. You could maybe make the argument: did this come from higher than Jalen? Has someone had a word with Jalen to do this? I don't think so, because Jalen's been his own man the entire time. But the thing for me, and what I read into it, I'm really interested, Tony, to get your opinion, just because you did the podcast, the article this week. The thing for me was the vibe I got was they'd had conversations, and the way I read it was Nick had agreed to something that Jalen wants to do. It felt to me that it had conversations about different ways of doing things, and Jalen looked excited, like they were going to do something new that they haven't been doing before. That when I watched it, that's what I took away from it, regardless of the words that were said, the body language, the facial expressions, and the words combined. That's what I took from it. But that aside, Tony, thoughts on that?
I think it's one of these cases that I doth protest too much. I read the transcribe of what Jalen said, and when you're using narrative like "we are two leaders of the team," I'm happy and fortunate that we're able to come together in harmony. That actually tells me more about a rift in the relationship than it does about them actually being in harmony together. So I just wonder if that's a clue for all of us. And of course, I love my conspiracy theories. I just wonder if this is a bit of a clue for us that either things haven't been right and how he's got them in a room and banged their heads together and
That was
told them
one
to
option.
work and told them to work it out, or Jalen has realised that last week he did have an opportunity. There was an open door for him to praise Sirianni, openly and outwardly to the media, basically say, listen, we are together, we are a team, and he never did that. So I think it's more telling about, I think you said it last week actually, Liam, what he didn't say rather than what
It
he
was
did
what he
say.
didn't say, yeah.
And this week, it's about what he is saying that tells us a bit more about last week, in my opinion.
And just while you were saying that, I was reminiscing about your conspiracy theories, and I wonder whether we should get a little part of the podcast, which a weekly conspiracy theory from Tony. We've already had one, I think, today with Devin White. We barely started the podcast. I like that, and let me throw this conspiracy theory back at you, then, Phil. I don't believe this, but I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second. Um, is Hertz now thinking about his future without Sirianni? So 180 flip on what this actually looks like. But in reality, Hertz is thinking, I'm going to have a new coach soon. I need to show this new coach that I'm not just all out for myself. I'm not backing head coaches in the future. I want to show this other side to me because Sirianni is going to be around much longer. I mean, turning 360 up could be.
It's a theory. Um, I can see where you're coming from, and I think if you really want to go 360, that's exactly where where you could end up. I think for me, it's a fantastic thing. I love the quote. I think it says all the right things, and it's satisfied a lot of things for me that were nagging behind. And I think Tony's also absolutely right. It does highlight the negative space before it, that
Mhm.
what was there before, um, and
But it's
but it
better
also
than had he come out and said the same Jalen Hurts press conference we're used to, not really saying much, a few words here, a few words there. Oh, we have our moments, you know. Where's your tinfoil hat, Liam? Hi, Matt. Welcome to the podcast. Um, it could have been the same again. And then you're going into this week thinking no matter how good the performance is against the Browns and no matter how positive it is, you've still got that cloud of the Sirianni Hurts relationship hanging over your tinfoil hat. Um, but with Hurts coming out and saying this, and if they have a good performance this week, that could breathe new fire into the optimism, for Earth, like for the next, all the way for the rest of the season. I mean, that
yeah.
could pour cold water over the whole thing. If they don't win and we go back to normal, then I think it's all dead in the water anyway. So
I definitely think that there is an aspect of, maybe someone's had a word in Jalen's ear going, you do realise that until he's gone, he's still there. And you need to make peace. And, whether he's gone or not, maybe it's inevitable. Maybe he knows it's gone. So he's just like, well, I can get along to go along until the end of the season. But it like it kind of reminds me of a few years ago when I was deployed. I had two lads working for me on ships. We were away for
flex,
7 months. Like
flex.
I'm kind of, it's not really a flex. It's horrible. Um, and we're kind of like a family because we're away. Like I'm kind of like I'm their boss and also like looking after them like from their personal life, and everything runs fine 9 times out of 10. But eventually it gets to the point where they're falling out, they're disagreeing, they're clashing, and you have to try and sort it out. And the way I used to deal with it was like, I'm treating you like adults, so you should be able to deal with it like adults most of the time. If I have to
Hmm.
get involved, that's when things get really uncomfortable for you and for me, because I don't want to have to get involved. I want to expect you guys to be able to deal with it. And it kind of echoes with this situation, because I feel like maybe Howie has got involved and gone, look, guys, like sort it out. If I have to get involved, it's not going to be comfortable for either of you. You are the star quarterback, but things can get made very difficult for you, and you are the head coach, and you are quite easily removable. And if you want to put the conspiracies on the table, that's maybe mine saying that
Hmm.
that's why there's a sudden sort of change in direction from at least Hurts, and everything seems suddenly okay just after a week off. Like someone's come in and gone, sort your shit out, lads. Otherwise, things are going to go really bad.
All right, I'm going to end this on a positive note because I do agree. You could look at it from all those angles, but let's look at it as what it is. Jalen Hurts, for the first time, has come back out and he has backed his head coach. He said he's a ton of respect for him, a ton of confidence for him, and he's really excited about the future. They've clearly aired some things out this week, which can only be good for the Eagles, but they are words, folks. They are words in a press conference. Actions speak louder than words. Maybe Jalen knows Nick's headset mic will be muted on Sunday. Nice one, Ben. Perhaps that is the case. Uh, Right, some more news before we get into the preview of the Browns. Cooper DeJean, it has been reported this week, will start at nickel. Reported first by ESPN, and a few different beat writers have now confirmed that that will happen. It can't get any worse for Avonte Maddox with what happened in the last few weeks. So seeing Maddox not on the field gives me some hope. And Cooper DeJean, nearly a first round pick, um, delighted to see him be given that opportunity because he's looked great every time he's come out. I did see that, Mick. That was not Jalen Hurts' chat GPT speech, but it could very well have been. And yes, Mike, it's definitely a good omen, regardless of its origin. Completely agree. But Cooper DeJean is back. Is back. Obviously missed a lot of training camp, and is now fit and healthy. He's been coming up to speed. Nickel's not his primary position. He was quoted as saying that he's been learning and asking questions from all of these different positions from day one. He just wants to help the team. I think we're going to enjoy Cooper DeJean being an Eagle for many, many moons to come. Uh, Darius Slay, some rumors on the grapevine today that he may be someone that Harry Roseman might trade before the trade deadline. I do want to bring this up as a topic of conversation. Slay seems to be coming up as a topic of conversation for a plethora of different reasons over the last few weeks. Let's hope next week it's because it's a lockdown corner display. But Tony, Slay's 33 years old. He believe He's the oldest CB1 in the league this year. He's played okay, not spectacular, not terrible. The Eagles have a lot of young guns in the secondary, and obviously Sidney Brown, we talk, is coming back. You've got Ringo, you've got Hugh, you've got DeJean, um, you've got um, you've got the pickup. Black Hammer's name now. The one we picked up last year, who had the betting scandal.
Isaiah
Um,
Rogers.
Isaiah Rogers, thank you, mind blank. Um, would you be happy with Eagles trading Darius Slay? First question. Second question, what do you think we get for him at this stage as a 33-year-old cornerback?
It's an interesting question. That you just have to look at the Browns injury list and some of the injury lists across the rest of the NFL, and there are people right across AFC and the NFC who are desperate for starting cornerbacks, starting linebackers, running backs, etc., etc. The injuries this year just seem to have been rife. I think what happens in the next couple of weeks will be very telling. So if Cooper DeJean comes in, solidifies that position. Isaiah Rogers gets some more snaps. Keely Ringo gets snaps, and Q keeps playing the way that he's playing. Then you would say, what's the risk of getting some draft capital for Darius Slay? But equally, you would also say, well, he's still got another half season left in him. If we are on the road to the Super Bowl just now, and I know that that's a great big if underline bold italic right now.
Yeah, not right now. We're not.
You know, but you could also argue, actually, if you move Slay on, who could you bring in? Is that
Now, Mick, if you did,
yeah,
if Mick has just commented yes, but apparently Liam and Tony think the Q is just lucky. If you did listen to the podcast last week, Mick, you will.
exactly.
We did profusely apologize and hold our hands up that he is not likely gunning for Q jersey in the club shop next month, Mike. 100%. I will definitely be trying to get one of those as well, because he is not lucky and he doesn't need luck. And then another
So,
comment from Ben Rogers did repost like a comment about him going back to the Colts. Interesting, I didn't see that. So that, yeah, look, let's corner this off for now. The Eagles have a lot of talent at cornerback and in the secondary. We didn't have that last year. Let's be thankful that these are the sort of conversations we're having, and we're not saying who do we need to go and trade for, who do we need to go and pick up who's still on free agency. You know, who do we need to get in to help this DB room, right? It's good to be having those conversations rather than the others. One position which I do think the Eagles will be targeting before the trade deadline, and we've mentioned it on a number of occasions, is the defensive end position. I don't want to spend too much time talking about Bryce Huff or the defensive end's lack of performance, because we covered that a lot on the last podcast we did. But Brandon Graham will be celebrating his 200th game for the Philadelphia Eagles this coming Sunday at the ripe age of 36. So congratulations, Brandon. Here he is, Tony supporting a signed jersey. As you can see there, love that, Tony.
Of course, it's
And
signed.
of course, it's signed. Yeah, yeah. You're in the middle ground, and
You're
Tony's in
in
the
the
middle of
middle.
the ring.
You're in the middle floor. You're in the middle floor. I'm in the Eagles cave.
You're in the Eagles West Wing. I love that. So while this is incredible news and it's great to see Brandon Graham get his 200th appearance for the Birds, he has been leading their pass rush snaps for the last couple of weeks, and that is not something from a defensive end position. That is not something that is sustainable for a 36-year-old. Just quick question, doesn't need to be long. Are the Eagles going to make a trade for a defensive end before the trade deadline? Question two, to answer both, are they going to bring Robert Saleh in as an assistant DC purely to work on Bryce Huff and get him to do the production he had last year? Dealer's choice. Whoever goes first.
I'll answer the second bit first. I feel like that's just not going to happen. As much as it would be amazing, I think we've spent so much time and effort getting Fangio in. I really don't think, as much as he would bring to the table, it would be a good idea right now, unless Fangio is the one pulling for it. So I really don't think that's going to be happening. As for trading for a defensive end, I think that's a really strong possibility right now. I feel like it's a real area we could inject some life. We touched on it on the last podcast, I think. Especially when we took on Sue and Linville Joseph 2 years ago, and what the impact that had. Surely, Howie is very much if it works, keep doing it. And I feel like it's the sort of thing that Howie will do. He'll look back 2 years ago, what went well, that went well. Who have we got on the market that's like that, and make a conscious effort to go and get players of that quality, and we certainly need it. Not that I mean Huff and Smith I've clearly haven't been up to standard, and I feel like they can get there maybe with a bit more time under Fangio's tutorship.
You think Huff
but
can
I feel
get
like we haven't got the time right now to allow them to develop at the speed that they seem to be developing. So we need some help.
Yeah, we do. The trade deadline is not till the 5th of November. So I think the next few weeks are going to pretty much define what that trade activity is like for the Birds if they go 3-0 in the next 3 games, which they should, really. Then I think you could definitely expect to see some trade pickups coming into the Eagles. They lose against the Browns and they lose one of the two next games after that, and we go 1-2 for the next 3 games. I think you might see the opposite stuff happen. I think Howie will be trading out, and that's when we're going to be. That's Sirianni sacked. That's Vic Fangio maybe not sacked. But that's a whole new change up. The Birds go 1-2 for the next 3 games. For me, that's it for the season. For Sirianni, for the whole shebang. Not because the record will be 3-5, which is still surmountable, but because of the teams that they would have played and the performance of those teams against other teams in the league and the talents that we have on paper. I just can't see that. But anyway, let's move on from that negativity. We're going to go to a quick Loch Lomond ad read, and then we'll be back in about 60 seconds or less to talk about the Browns preview. Catch you in 60 seconds.
Celebrate victories, rally through challenges, and bond with fellow fans as you toast with a dram of Loch Lomond single malt whisky. From tailgating gatherings to watch parties at home, Loch Lomond whisky becomes an essential companion, enhancing the moments that make football so extraordinary. It's the perfect accompaniment, from the joy of victory to the bittersweet moments of defeat. Loch Lomond offer a wide range of malts, with their flagship perfectly balanced, and signature expressions Inchmoan and Inchmuren to suit any taste palette. Celebrate greatness on and off the field this season with a perfect balance of Loch Lomond whisky and Eagles football. From the first pour to the crowd roar. Fly Eagles fly.
It's nice to hear that Go Birds sung at the end there by myself, like eloquently and with a bit of passion. And you can hear my voice completely the opposite to when I was we were at the watch along 2 weeks ago, when my Go Birds was more like Go Birds. definitely couldn't hear a word I was saying. All right, just to start off, before we get into the preview, we got a question here from Gary Potts. Hi, Gary. Use your schedule, increase confidence, along with more time working at it. Hopefully, we'll see an improvement for the whole defense, similar to how the Dolphins were last year after Week 5. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see that, Gary. And there's nothing to say that can't happen. Teams go into the bye and they get better. They work stuff out. They make changes that they were thinking about preseason, and they make them in season. You would hope that someone as experienced as Vic Fangio, who I called Vangio by accident on a recent tweet this week, if anyone saw it, you would hope he's experienced enough and not too proud to be able to make those changes with what's needed. And likewise with Kellen Moore, and likewise with Sirianni and Hurts. This is a chance for them to really change the dial, change the course of direction for the Eagles and where they're going this year. And I certainly hope you're right, Gary. We'll see in a couple of weeks how that bears out. All right, let's get into the preview against the Browns. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the Browns first. We're going to look at their weaknesses, and we're also going to look at what their difference makers might be and how the Eagles are going to match up against them. And we're talking about the Eagles as well and how they may match up against the Browns and how we're going to win this game this coming Sunday. It gives me great pleasure, an inordinate amount of pleasure, to introduce our first weakness for the Browns this week. And I really hope I don't eat my words. But Deshaun Watson. The Browns are 1-4 at the moment, and a lot of that has been down to Deshaun Watson. We all know the story. We all know the background. I'm not going to comment on that whatsoever. But I did say it gives me great pleasure, so you probably know where I'm coming from. Deshaun Watson has had a woeful start to the year. I'm not going to reel off all the stats I have in front of us because we'll have nothing to talk about when I ask the questions next. But there are a plethora, second time I've used the words plethora, thank you. There are a plethora of stats that shows Deshaun Watson is playing historically bad for the Browns. And I'll name a couple before passing it over here. Last week against the Commanders, he was 1 for 13. Yeah, I know, right? What a surprise, Mike. He was 1 of 13 on third downs, and he averaged 4.5 yards with a passer rating of below 80. It's the fifth straight game with a sub 90 passer rating for him. I'm just going to leave that there for starters. Phil, I'm going to bring you in as you drink a glass of water from the beautifully etched British and Irish Eagles glass that Lee has crafted for you. Looks absolutely fantastic. Are you in any way worried about Deshaun Watson finally clicking out of this first gear he's in, finally playing to the level which was top 3 quarterback in the league before all of the allegations? He was seen as a guy who can sling it, a guy who's accurate, a guy who can run with the ball, super talented, young. Now he looks like he's never played football before. Are you worried he can click back into gear, or are you excited to see him get benched after the first 2 quarters?
Well, it'll be stunningly Philadelphian for him to click back into place when he plays us. Let's put it that way. That's the tempting fate that I feel like in my mind. I'm like, oh god, it would just be so typical if he did. But I don't. That's my gut, like my heart. My gut is sort of, and my brain are saying that it's not. He spent too long away from football, which was the main detraction when we were on podcast with Zach Berman asking about whether he'd take Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, all that sort of stuff. It just felt like everyone was saying, well, he's just going to be exactly the same as what he was when he was at
And
the Texans. And I
ZB
was like,
Burn on the podcast, Phil. ZB Burn. Look, poor
I
Zach.
think he was
Stepping on his
more
skin.
Wilson though, wasn't he? But
He was more
it's
Wilson.
the same principle applies. It's when we were at that point, that crossroads, and we were considering these experienced quarterbacks, and look what's happened to both of them now. Like you wouldn't want to touch either of them with a barge pole. Sorry for the touching comment with Deshaun Watson. I suppose it's a bit on point, but there's another one. It's a case of he is not performing and the team hates him and the coach hates him and the team around him, the players are not enamored with him, and it just feels like the only thing keeping him there is the money. And I've saw a wild theory that there is I think it was from the that guy that we all hate, the guy with the goatee and the long hair on.
I've etched his name from my memory.
Remember what his name is, but anyway, he came up with
I
theory.
know who you mean.
Okay, fair enough. That's probably the only situation was if he gets traded to another team with the Browns' first round pick, just to get rid of him, with a team that can take the dead cap hit, is the only way that he'd get off that team. But it's a theory, and I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised.
So, like an opposite trade, you're saying. So, so they would have they're paying someone to take him off because of the dead cap money.
A team that's rebuilding.
I can't see that happening.
No, I think it was one of those things where it's literally like, this is the desperation. You know that the Browns are really in bad way if that's what they end up doing. But it just goes to show overarchingly what the situation is, and that does give you a huge amount of confidence that this is the perfect team in theory to come back off a bye after a really sort of middling start to the season, a week off to get right, and then who would you rather face right now? Someone like the Browns, maybe the Panthers, but even the Panthers have had a bit of a turnaround. So this could be an exceptional weekend for us.
I think I'd rather play the Panthers if you were going to give me those two options, purely because of the playmakers that the Browns do have on the defensive side of the ball and on the offensive side of the ball. Mick McGivern clearly on the whiskey, loads of messages. Browns are inherent losers. Only chance they have is if Garrett absolutely wrecks the game. Very good point, Mick. So Garrett missed the last game, did not play in the last game, and did not practice today. So that would suggest he is trending to be out. However, we will monitor that closely over the coming days, because if he is out, then obviously that's a huge loss for the Brown. Mike Still, since he signed for the Browns, he's had more dropped legal cases than touchdowns, 23-19. Very good. Love that stat. Tony, I want to take a different angle with Deshaun Watson here for a second, and I want you to look at our defensive line and our pass rush, and specifically the amount of times that Deshaun Watson has been sacked this year. Do you think this is a game that could change the fortunes of the pass rush for the Eagles and provide them the confidence that they need? Or are we going to be coming on Monday and be like, Jesus, this guy's been sacked so many times and we still can't get to him?
I think it could be either or, Liam. It's such a difficult yardstick to use this weekend, given everything that everyone else has done with the Browns. Let me just rewind slightly and bring a bit of balance to the Deshaun Watson narrative, not on the obvious in terms of his alleged misdemeanors down in Texas. Deshaun Watson has missed 28 games in the last 3 years. So he missed a full season down in Texas. He was then suspended for a season. He then started 6 games for the Browns last year, went 5-1. So he had a decent season last year before he went down injured. He then, this season, has had this catastrophic fall from grace.
Well, the defense as well, Tony, just on that point, the defense for the Browns last year was so good that the defense were almost winning some of those games.
It was lit, but, whilst they say that defences win you championships, defences always don't win you games. You've still got to score points. And, you look at some of the play of Watson last year, and actually it was decent. But then you look at what happened when he went down and Flacco came in, and they ended the season last year, 11-6, 12-5. So they were a decent team last year. Yes, absolutely, the defence was lit. However, lest we forget that the Browns have burned down their offensive coaching staff, and they've completely rebuilt an offensive coaching staff this year, and it's patently going wrong. Now, is it going wrong because of Watson? Is it going wrong because of injuries? Is it going wrong because of play calling? Is it going wrong because they're all just getting used to one another? So, while you say this is the perfect get-right game, equally, this is the biggest trap game for Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts as far as this season's concerned, because every day, look at the betting line. The Eagles haven't won a game by more than a score in how long?
More than 13 points in about 15 games. Yeah, I think it's something like that.
Yeah,
so in 13 games.
So you're over 12 months ago since we've won a game by more than a score. So 2 scores or more. Yep. Sounds like the forefather speech, doesn't it?
Very good.
Now, when would the Eagles ever, in the current form and with the collapse of last season, be 9.5 point favourites? So I think we're in a dreadful situation this weekend. By rights, we should get it.
It's a very good
We,
point.
we should get it right. We should get it right. Would I be taking the over 9.5 on the Eagles? Absolutely
No.
not.
And
Not a chance.
I
Not a
wouldn't
chance
smash
I'd be
the
touching
under
that.
either. I wouldn't smash the under either just because I couldn't do that to my
I
own
just,
team.
I just, I just
But
wouldn't
yeah,
touch it. I just
I know
wouldn't
a few
touch it.
people in the British and Irish Eagles group will be smashing the under on that.
So let's not get into smashing the under when we're talking about Deshaun Watson again. Um, but to go back to your question, is this a get right game for our defensive ends? You look at that injury list of the Browns, Liam, and you referred to Miles Garrett not practicing. Let me just read you a few of the other ones that didn't practice. So Miles Garrett, Achilles, didn't practice. Denzel Ward, hamstring, didn't practice. David Njoku, knee and ankle. And I know that David Njoku is a tight end, didn't practice. You've got Jonta Foreman, running back, didn't practice. Amari Cooper, didn't practice, albeit it was just a rest day for him. Nick Chubb, limited practice. I remember the memes from 2020 when the Eagles injury list went out and it was the whole team
That's how we
dead
started
type
our
thing.
podcast, which was called Next Man Up. That was
That's
why we
right.
started the podcast.
That's exactly it. So I think the way that I'm looking at this game is, regardless of the box scores, regardless of how the defense performs, let's just get off the field with a win. And to Phil's earlier point, you get off the field with a win. Is that the get right? Is that the catalyst for then, going to MetLife a week on Sunday and beginning, this resurrection? What I would be looking for this weekend. What I'd be looking for this weekend is a solid defensive performance. Locking down whatever it is that the Browns have got to offer. We'll come on to their weapons in the not too distant future. But you get off the field with a win, and a win with a degree of panache, and one that we're not actually sitting here next week saying, actually it was a one-score game and it could have gone either way. So I'm not bothered about a plus 9.5 or a minus 9.5, whichever way you look at it. All I want is that win, to get out unscathed, to have no more injuries, and to have something to build on to go into MetLife the week after.
I would love that, and I wholeheartedly agree with you. That is the best thing that can happen. Just to touch on the sacks that Deshaun Watson has had this year, he took 7 sacks last week. And the offensive line, which is also in the weakness column here for the Browns against the Birds, even though our pass rush is pretty awful, but their offensive line have given up a league leading 26 sacks through 5 games. Their offensive line is currently ranked in the bottom 3 by PFF. Their injuries have been plentiful, Tony, as you mentioned. They did get starting left tackle Jedrick Willis Jr. back last week, and while he played okay, he still couldn't stop the Commanders getting to Watson 7 times. Their second-year right tackle, Darwin Jones, really has continued to struggle. He allowed 6 pressures last week against the Commanders. And I believe Jedrick Willis Jr. is also on the injury report today. I can't remember whether he is limited or he is did not practice, but he is also on there as well. The Browns' offensive line and Deshaun Watson is the biggest weakness combined for the Browns going into this game against the Eagles on Sunday. Phil, at the start of the year, when we looked at the Browns, you could make a case for their offense looking pretty potent, despite what we've just said. Uh, Historically, their offensive line have been pretty good. There's, as I mentioned, Darwin Jones is a second-year right tackle. You would expect an improvement from that player. You look at their wide receiver core in Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, and David Njoku. While he's a tight end, he's one of the better pass-catching tight ends in the league, and he can certainly win a game for you. But they've underperformed so far this year. Now, obviously, the offensive line and Deshaun Watson have a lot to do with that. Are you concerned at all about this receiving core this coming Sunday, given the talent they clearly have and have shown in the past? Do you think that should be a worry for the Eagles?
Not while Watson's at quarterback. I think a lot of those stats came in with Flacco last year. Predominantly, Cooper's had a bit of a resurgence once, excuse me, Watson went down last year. And it doesn't really. I mean, this is not just because they're facing the Eagles this weekend, but a lot of my fantasy teams where I've got Cooper in. I'm happy dropping him for players that project to get lesser points, because I just generally think that he gets a certain level of, like, Cooper is Cooper, but whilst Watson's thrown to him, it is like playing with one leg, to an extent. And I feel like Njoku's come back a little bit from an injury as well, I
He's only
believe.
played 2 games this year. He's got 50,
Yeah, so
50 odd yards, and he's clearly still injured. He didn't practice today, so
and Jerry Jeudy, we know, had struggles in Denver and has sort of tried to come to Cleveland for a bit of a rejuvenation, but it's probably the worst place you want a rejuvenation right now. So on paper and everything else, I feel like I'm not worried. But as we know, it only takes one hot game to sort of get you to turn your fortunes around. So you just got to be wary of them. The worst thing the Eagles can really do, and it's probably going to be my keys to victory, is just don't underestimate the Browns. Just expect them to be
yeah,
what they are on paper, and if they're not,
yeah.
great.
I think that's a great take. Don't underestimate the Browns. Expect them to be what they are on paper, and don't make any mistakes. Don't get cocky. Talking about cocky, I'm not going to talk about this in much detail, but the Phillies. Um, I've just found over the last month, the media hype around them, the way the players were talking about this World Series they were going to win, they got complacent, they got cocky, and they got found out by a team on form. And I just don't want that to happen to the Birds. They're not in a place where they should feel cocky at the moment, but if they do, temper your expectations. Want to talk about the defense a little bit before we get into our predictions to round out, before we talk about the Eagles and our predictions to round out the podcast. So they had 3 sacks against Washington last week. They did get to the quarterback despite Myles Garrett not being around. And also, they have one of the most disruptive linebackers in the league, which I know Mick McGibbon will love to hear us talk about. Jeremiah Usua-Kora. Ah, damn it, I definitely messed that up. I only did it because you wanted me to do it, Tony. Right? You baited me into that one earlier in the podcast.
Am I the only one who can pronounce names on this podcast? I swear.
Jeremiah
Owusu
Owusu-Kora.
Koromoa.
Koromoa, I missed the more of it. All right, sorry. Jock, as he's affectionately known in Scotland, one of the best linebackers in the league. He already has 40 tackles on the year, 1 sack, 1 interception. That sack and an interception were both last week against Commanders. Even though they lost, he had a great game and is certainly someone the Eagles will need to look out for. Certainly someone that Hurts is going to need to be wary of. Certainly something that Barkley's going to need to be aware of. And certainly something they have to be aware of coming into the game. The secondary was very good last year. They're okay this year. They fell off a little bit. They conceded some big plays last week to Jaden Daniels, 60-yarder, 40-yarder, and 30-plus yarder. And Denzel Ward is the pick of the bunch there, currently ranked 17th best cornerback in the league by PFF. So look, the defense is good, but I want to touch on the Eagles, and I want to touch on how the Birds can win this game before we get into our predictions. And I'm not going to say any more on this. I'm going to ask you for both of your opinions on where you think this game is won by the Eagles. And Tony Burton, as the brain of this trio, tell us what's going to happen, my friend.
Okay, so looking at data, Liam, you mentioned earlier on that we have not scored a point in the first in the first quarter of the last 7 games. So for me, we have to be prepared and we need to start quickly in this game. And I'm almost in the position, in fact, I'll have a wee look at the lines and the bookmakers in Las Vegas in the next few days. But I'm almost in a position to say whoever scores the most points in the first quarter of this game wins the game. I don't think we are playing well from behind. And I would even change it up to the extent that, we have a tendency, if we win the toss, we'll defer If we win the toss on Sunday, I would take the ball. I would definitely take the ball, get some points on the board. The last thing that we want is, an underperforming defence continuing to underperform, and we go behind on the points board. That's when Jalen begins to try and play hero ball. That's when the rash calls potentially come from Sirianni into Kellen Moore's ears. So take the ball, get some points on the board, correct what's been going wrong. Mick's made the point. We've had 2 weeks to prepare. Sirianni doesn't have them ready to beat a floundering and injured, beat up Browns team who have been run over all over last week by the New York Giants. By the Commanders. Then win in a bad way. Take the ball, get points on the board, and play from the front for a change. That's how we win the game.
Yeah, I love that. And just looking at some of the messages that came in on the chat, Phil, I appreciate you not flying them in because I was stumbling over a couple of them as you were. But Mike Searle, blind optimism, birds by 18. Love that. Mick, again, Eagles have had 2 weeks to prepare. If Sirianni doesn't have them ready for the Browns at home, it's over. I could not agree more, Mick. Despite my staunch defense of Sirianni and his record and the belief that the Eagles have in him, and despite what Jen has come out to say, if the Eagles don't win against the Browns and they have a poor performance, Sirianni in my book should be sacked. Ryan, do we take dynasty questions? We do. Let's have it. Yes, Matt, Denzel Ward didn't practice yesterday. He is nursing a hamstring injury. We'll see what that looks like in the coming days. Phil. Tony stole some of your thunder from previous weeks, where you've been a big proponent of the Eagles coming out and scoring early, to be a difference maker from the game. But I do believe he is right this week specifically because if the Eagles if Deshaun Watson drives the ball down the field slowly over 7 minutes and they score a touchdown, and Jalen Hurts coming back out with 8 minutes left in the first quarter, starting at his own 10-yard line. The first play is a dud, say it's a rushing play called for no yards.
What are you doing to me, Liam?
I could just see a scenario where Hurts then, as we've seen recently, throws a deep ball, picked off, whatever, and then we're just back into hell again. Sorry. What do you think the Eagles need to do to win this game against the Browns? What is the key for you?
I just got to get over my PTSD episode there. Like it's just bringing me back to reality with a heavy thump. Like that's exactly what happened. We build ourselves up over the course of the week, but this case 2 weeks. We're talking at the Eagles by 18. We're talking about this, that, the other. The Browns are trash. The Eagles are going to be coming out, and then the first drive happens, and it's just completely the opposite. And we're just like, oh my god! And then for the next 3 hours, we're just crying or shouting at each other, arguing about optimism versus pessimism, and I'm just banishing all that from my mind. I'm not thinking about that because Liam, that was a horrible thing to do. Let's stay positive here because there's a lot riding on it. There's no getting away from that. Like the Eagles have got a huge amount of pressure coming into this game. This game is going to be the litmus test for the rest of the season as far as Eagles fans and the media are going to be concerned. You've had an extra week. You're coming into a team that you should easily beat. So anything less than a victory is going to be met with severe retribution and attack verbally, online, everywhere. So there's a huge amount of pressure, but I think Tony's absolutely right. The best way to fight that is to come out and like ram it down their throats, as I used to say over previous seasons. Just come out and just don't stop until you are out of sight, because there is, even if they score on the first drive, even if they start well, we've seen against the Cardinals last year, we all thought it was going to be a walk in the park, and look how that ended up. The 30 unanswered third quarter points, and we ended up losing that game in really excruciating circumstances.
Talk about PTSD. Don't do that to me. So I think what Amos and Cosmo heard from that was the Eagles need to come out purring on offense. Sorry.
It's better than a Watson pun anyway, because I know Ben's getting a bit fed up of those.
Good stuff. Alrighty. Right, folks. Let us get to. Actually, I'm going to do something that you're not expecting. So, every week we have 2 awards that we give out, Phil. What are those 2 awards? The Loch Lomond Play of the Week
The downright sexy.
and the Damn Right Sexy. I'm going to ask you both to give me who you think your Damn Right Sexy is in advance of the Damn Right Sexy happening. So, to give you some time to think about it, I'm going to go with my Damn Right Sexy. I think Jalen Hurts is going to be the Damn Right Sexy this coming week. I think Jalen Hurts, I can see Tony was going to say him because he just called me a bastard. I think Jalen Hurts is going to be the damn right sexy this week. I think he's going to come out and I think he's going to ball. I think there's going to be more throws thrown over the middle of the field. I think he's going to his short passing game is going to be good, and I think he's going to connect on some bombs. You look at what happened to the secondary and the long passing plays that the Commanders were able to put out last week. I think Jalen Hurts is going to take advantage of that. He's going to have Devontae Smith back. He's going to have AJ Brown back. And I think it's going to be a damn right sexy performance for Jalen Hurts next week. Phil, I'll come to you while Tony tries desperately to think of someone else.
Well, for also guys that are watching in, please enter your damn right sexies that you think are going to be in the comments box. I'd love to see what you guys think. But from my perspective, for a second, I was half tempted to go for Sirianni just because I'm willing it to an existence that they've sorted it out. He's going to have a masterful game for some reason. It's all going to come up roses and he's going to be back on top of the mountain. But I felt that was just too far, too much, and too Phil for one evening. I think the damn right sexy is just going to be AJ Brown, just pure and simple, because I feel like he's been itching to get back on the field now for 3-4 weeks. He is our absolute grenade on offense, and it just, we needed him so badly. I mean, like, Smith can hold the fort while AJ Brown's gone, but whilst they're both gone, it was absolutely devoid. We just we've got them both back, so I'd be happy if it's Devontae Smith. But I feel like AJ Brown's going to be coming back in, going, AJ Brown against the Browns. I guess poetic, serendipitousness, or whatever it's called. It's going to be AJ Brown for me.
I love that. AJ Brown back with a bang. Matt Mills, to quote Tony, bastard. Mike Sewell, Saquon Barkley, 200 yards. I would love to see that. All right, gentlemen. Let us get your game predictions for this coming weekend. Amos has the Birds winning by 24 points and some catnip. What about you, Tony?
I'm at a place where I've already said that I would never back the Eagles at the moment to cover a spread of -9.5. So the head's telling me be conservative. We are going to get the win. The want would be it is a convincing win. Might not be in points, but it's a convincing win, and one that we can come on and discuss all the positives this time next week. However, the heart is saying we're going to win by 3 scores, and the biggest challenge that Phil and I are going to have next week is pulling you down off the ceiling from the Eagles going to the Super Bowl. The other thing that so in my downright sexy, which you rudely didn't come back to me and ask.
I'm sorry.
I would have said Jalen Hurts, then I would have said AJ Brown. So Matt, you're absolutely right. Phil, you're a bastard as well. But actually, my current downright sexy is Ben. I do not know why Ben has been banned and his comments been removed from the chat. He's come back, all is forgiven. You didn't say anything. You didn't say anything that I thought was offensive. Sorry, mate.
So basically, to confirm what happened. I'm glad you picked up on that. So
I've just seen how you did it now.
no. So basically, so I put it in our WhatsApp chat. I went to go and like, not knowing how the live version of StreamYard works. I went to go and like the comment, and I thought by pressing the three dots there will be a like button to like a comment is put in the chat. I inadvertently then pressed the button, which has not only removed him from the chat as comments, but has also banned him. So Ben, I'm very
Technical
sorry.
difficulties, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm very sorry. Ben has WhatsApped me back saying, "I'm in a timeout? Question mark. Have you been speaking to my wife?" Very good. Well done, Ben.
Well,
Um,
quite funnily, Liam, the viewers jumped up by another 20. So there must have been something that's gone out to say that people are getting banned on our live stream. Brilliant. Come back, Ben. Always forgiven, mate.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. So, Phil,
Score prediction?
please, sir.
I'm echoing Tony's optimism. I feel like we've got to be positive on this occasion. What else can we be? It feels like before the Phillies went into their last baseball game, there's nothing but optimism. You can't help but hope that something good happens. So I'm going to keep carrying on that kind of optimism. It could be an absolutely phenomenal game based on everything that's on paper and the struggles of the Browns, and it's just all dependent on if the Eagles come back strongly. I think, assuming that they do, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Saquon Barkley, Dallas Goedert, Lane Johnson, all these people back, and Jalen Hurts is happy again.
We say that every week, Phil. We say that every week.
It's gonna be it could even be a 4-score game, but I'm gonna go 35 to 12.
35-12, that's big. I mean, I like being the outlandish guy on this podcast every now and again and projecting a big score, and I'll happily have people laugh at me to do so, because if it comes off, I'm just gonna be the happiest man alive. But these are some big score wins. That Phil, that's a did you say 35-12?
Mm-hmm.
23 point game. That's big. I don't think the Eagles are going to win by that many. I think they still have a lot to work out. I think they're going to be better. I think there's still going to be some frustrating moments where we get down to the end zone and we don't score, or we get down and we don't take points. I think that's still going to be something that they iron out. Matt 31-6, I like your positivity. I'm going to go for 27-16 to the Eagles. And I'm gonna take that and run to the bank, because, as Tony mentioned earlier, we just need to get out of this with a win, and move on to the next game. As long as we see some improvements and that they've worked some of the stuff out that needed to work out, I think I'll be happy. I think Tony will be happy. I think you, Phil, will be happy as well. And on that note, thank you very much for listening in to the British and Irish Eagles podcast. We look forward to chatting to those of you who are members on game day on Sunday. Those of us who are at the London game, and who are going, I hope you enjoy it. And I hope you make sure you get back in time to watch the Eagles, even if it means leaving after the third quarter, which is my plan. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know your predictions. Mike Sewell, 30-12. Thank you, Mike. Leave your comments. Let us know what you thought. Anything you want us to discuss next time around. But listen, we are the British and Irish Eagles. We are here for you, the fans. We love every single one of you. And let's go beat those Browns, baby. Go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.